Hello, welcome back to this gospel witness journey. Do you have a favorite family recipe that's been passed down from generation to generation? In our family, my kids are always asking me for my recipe for white chicken chili. But my truthful answer is always, I don't know, I kind of throw in a little bit of whatever I have on hand. I don't know how much Monterey Jack cheese or how much salsa I put in the chili that particular time. It just kind of depends. That can be really frustrating for them as they're learning to cook. But if they just know the basic ingredients, they can play around with it, and their own versions will be just as good. For the same reasons, learning to be a gospel witness or learning the process of evangelism can be just as frustrating. So often we want a recipe, we want exact ingredients so that the result is the same every single time. Unfortunately, gospel witness is not like that, because our context, the people we're sharing the good news with, changes every time. The context for sharing the gospel, the good news today, is different than it ever has been in the past. Today, many of our neighbors don't know who Jesus is or don't know very much about what the church is for. Some of us learned a recipe for evangelism that no longer works because our neighbors don't know very much about the gospel. Today, I'm going to share a recipe with you about how to share the good news with your neighbors. Again, this is a recipe that doesn't have exact ingredients, and it's not going to produce the same exact result every time. But if you know the general ingredients and can play with them a little bit and adapt them to your own context, you will have some confidence in how to share this good news with your neighbor. The first ingredient is knowing your neighbor and knowing your neighbor's life, knowing what's happening in their life, knowing their fears, their joys, their worries, their anxieties, the things that they celebrate. This happens over a long period of time, being present with your neighbor and getting to know them with some intentionality. The second ingredient is knowing about who God is. What do we know about God's character? What do we know about who God is? What do we know about what God wants for us and for His creation? What do we know about the work that God is doing in our neighborhoods and our communities, working with the Spirit to redeem and restore all things? And then, what does it look like when we put those two ingredients together? Where do we see who God is present in our neighbor's life? Where do we see what God is doing as what God is doing in our neighbor's life? And finally, when prayerfully is there an opportunity to share that good news with them, to name for them, to reveal to them where God is at work in their life? We're going to hear a story now from Ari, who's telling us about what it looks like to proclaim the good news with a neighbor of his.
I've lived here for many years in this neighborhood, and always knew a number of my neighbors. But then, when I became part of a small group at church, we started to look at how we could be more intentional about being good neighbors, and that was for me a big eye-opener. I never considered the notion of being intentional. And it started out with just going for walks and noticing who was out and who was not out, who was doing what, and basically making sure I greeted everyone and stopped and made short talk. So being intentional forced me to remember more of the conversations that I had with people. And then the conversation became much more than just a hi, hello, how are you, or oh, fine, goodbye. So I got to know, over a number of months, I got to know a lot of folks in this area, and I got to know a lot about them because I remembered it. I was interested. I became much more interested in people, and share myself as well. As I was doing that, it became sort of more automatic that relationships started to develop. And we started to talk about things that became a little bit more meaningful over time. And so there are 100 stories that there are. I know there's a couple at the end of this alleyway, and a couple of years ago, they lost their son to suicide. and they were devastated, terribly devastated, and became very, very angry with God for not preventing that. And I remember we started visiting them, just bring a bowl of soup or whatever and just listen to them. And I think for myself at least, I bring Jesus more directly through those kinds of things, those kind of interactions with people, listening and allowing people to express themselves. And then there's opportunity to pray, either for people before you even get there, or there are times when it comes up during the conversation. It comes up more naturally if you have a relationship that has been growing for a number of months or years. So 3 weeks ago, I walked through the alley. I was going to go down there. We were sitting outside, both of them. They come, go here, we want to talk to you. So sit down. And their grandson had just committed suicide. It was the son of their son who had committed suicide at 56. And now this guy's son had just committed suicide at 26. And they were just sitting outside. They had just heard the news. And they were just devastated. And again, it was just, they saw me coming by, and it was not because I'm so good. I just happened to walk by and wanted to offload. And again, there was this fierce anger to God, and so on and so forth. And really, all you can do in those moments is just listening to them and just let them blow off steam. Allow God to take that, and things slow down a little bit, and then I could share a little bit better about sort of challenging them maybe in some hopefully gentle way, of saying, what if God was crying with you? What if God was sad for you? What if He didn't want to see this happen as well? And then the conversation can begin opening up. They can either agree with it or disagree, and then I'm not out there to make any points or to have an argument with anyone, but there are these natural ways in which conversations can open up and become a little deeper. And you just have to be willing to, I think, first of all, listen, and then discern where the Spirit is going with this. And then just be yourself. There's opportunities every day that I began to see as what I call God moments. They're not orchestrated by myself. They're just because I've learned to open my ears and my eyes. And this is something that God just wants us to do, that God calls us to. That this is a normal thing. This is not heroics. This is not special church missions. This is what God calls each and every one of us to.
Evangelism, proclaiming gospel witness, is something that takes both deeds and words. It's something that takes place over a long period of time as we develop relationships with our neighbors and the people around us. How are you going to share the good news in your neighborhood with your neighbors? What is the recipe you'll develop? Where do you see God's story intersecting their story?